Tired of home meal kits that require you to follow their tired old recipes? At Chef's Chaos Kitchen, we say throw out the book, literally. Our subscription box sends you random ingredients, no instructions, and a timer. Can you make a meal before the buzzer goes off? Your family sure hopes so. You might get cinnamon, anchovies, and marshmallows, or perhaps spaghetti, dragon fruit, and a can of cheese spray. What you create is up to you. Sign up today and get your first box with our special Chaos Pack featuring ingredients so random that some of it may not actually be edible. Chef's Chaos Kitchen, turning dinner into a game of chance. Welcome to Movie Postmortem, where we dissect films of all kinds, whether they're good, bad, or those guilty pleasures we just can't quit. I'm Reggie Hill, and I'm joined by my nephew, Isaiah Brown. Together, we're here to examine what worked, what didn't, and why we keep coming back for more. So grab your popcorn because no movie is safe from the scalpel on Movie Postmortem. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Movie Postmortem. I am Reggie here with my nephew Isaiah. And before we get started on today's episode, Isaiah wants to say something real quick.
Okay, I just want to say real quick that this video or this podcast episode is dedicated to our brave firefighters and people in the and first responders in California because I've seen so many things, so many people giving their testimonies saying they have lost either their livelihoods or their places of living because the universe just decides just no to you. And so there's so much negativity right now. So I want I want this episode to be positive, give like a good positive feeling to everyone out there because Lord knows we need it right now.
Well said, Isaiah. Thank you for that. And a reminder that movies, entertainment can be a great distraction or even something that's uplifting in times when we need it. So we hope this will serve as that for anybody listening. Let's get started. So, on today's episode of Movie Postmortem, we will be talking about Transformers 1. Transformers 1 was an animated film that came out at the end of September 2024, and I'll start off with a quick summary. Transformers 1 is the untold origin story of Optimus Prime and Megatron, usually known as bitter sworn enemies, but who were once friends, bonded like brothers who changed the fate of Cybertron forever. And so, just as another reminder, here on Movie Postmortem, we do not care about spoilers. So, this is not a movie preview. This is a movie review. So, you should have watched the film because we're going to dive into lots of spoiler materials because you can't do a movie postmortem without getting into the nitty-gritty details, the guts and organs of it.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else to that summary that I should add, Isaiah?
Yeah, one thing. If you haven't watched Transformers 1, pause and come back after you watched it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. If we've already piqued your interest, watch the movie, then come back. We'll be here waiting for you.
Yeah, I promise it is not what you're expecting based on the first trailers.
Yes, that's something we'll get into. So, to start off, let's just talk about whether or not you feel this movie is good, bad, or a guilty pleasure. And so, I'll let you go first, Isaiah. How would you classify this movie?
Okay, this movie is what I consider to be my favorite movie of the entirety of 2024.
Wow, that's
And
high praise.
yeah, this movie is so good. And I'm saying this both as a movie watcher and as a Transformers fan.
That's heavy praise from you because I feel like Isaiah doesn't love many movies, so the fact that you love this really says a lot. And so, like, I'm really looking forward to how you kind of classify this as we break it down more. I would say my take on it is also that this is a good movie. This was a movie I was surprised by how good it was. It was a movie that I had not planned on watching. And we can talk about why that is later. And
Yeah.
so, sitting in the film and afterwards, I really felt like, wow, this is a really good movie. And it was something that I've watched twice now, once again in preparation for this podcast. And so I was really kind of taken aback by how much of a pleasant surprise it was in terms of actually, watching the film. And so you brought up a really good point that I think we should probably dive into right now. Why do you think it was so surprising that this was a good movie?
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone and their mom has touched on this by now because it's almost criminal. But the reason why I believe this movie is so shockingly good is because the whoever marketed this movie, they need to be fired. I'm just gonna put that out there right now.
Yes, it did not seem like a movie that I would care to watch or I would be considering good after I saw it. I remember the first trailer, and the first trailer did not seem interesting to me and actually kind of turned me off, honestly.
Yeah, like I was when I first watched the first trailer, I was like, "Oh, this is like just getting little kids into the new Transformers movies." I get it. That's what they're trying to do. Probably like a probably like the minions of Transformers. That's what I was expecting.
Yeah, it
Everything's
did
just
have
like, oh, it's silly, did all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it did have a very, young demographic skewing trailer that kind of played up a lot of silly, kind of juvenile humor. And that coupled with the change from the live action, really, like you said, that's a good point. It screamed to me, Minions or, Rugrats even type of humor where this seemed like something that should just be on television. I was actually surprised it was a feature film that was going to be released.
Yes, and so we say it's a terrible marketing strategy because this movie, for being a kids movie, is very dark. There are a
It's
whole lot of dark themes in this movie. I'll say that.
There are dark themes. There are things that are very mature in terms of the plot lines and the things that happen. And so something that seemed like it was Nickelodeon G-rated seemed to be something that had really good writing and was actually mature, especially for the subject matter. And I think that might be unfair to say that we would assume a Transformers movie would not be mature, but it was something that kind of surprised me. So maybe we can take a step back. Let's go back in history a little bit. Um, I think another reason I was surprised that this movie was good was because a lot of the previous live action movies have been so just poorly made.
They are mixed bags. The only Bayverse Transformers movie I actually enjoy is pretty much the first one. The rest ones I really don't care for.
Yeah, I was gonna say like let's run down that. So the first one, Transformers, you like that one?
Yeah. But after a while, I will say this: I got very sick of just hearing Sam Witwicky.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, yeah. That seemed to be half the dialogue was calling Sam Wicky's name or Sam just screaming at the top of his lungs. I think Shia LaBeouf, the thing I really learned from that movie, like, wow, he got a great set of lungs on him. That guy can scream.
yeah. And I'm Shia LaBeouf. You are very successful, and I'm sure that I hope you had fun recording the first Transformers movie.
No, I'll say he really made the first film for me. Like I think he put his all into it. You could tell this guy was really working. It's hard to act against nothing, I'm assuming, and he really sold the action, the comedy, everything. And so the first Transformers did really well. And then after that, they came with Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
still have not watched it to this day.
Yeah, I can tell you I've watched it. I don't really remember much about it. And I think that's where the films really faltered later in the franchise is that they had plots that were not really unique and they did the same sort of thing over and over again. It's just, mixes
Yeah,
of metal, clashing against each other.
I will say that it's probably this is my opinion. I feel like the Bayverse movies they dip in quality with each movie.
Yeah.
The only one that broke that curse is I think Bumblebee.
Yes, and so before we even get to Bumblebee, there was Transformers Dark of the Moon. Couldn't tell you anything about that. Transformers Age of Extinction. I don't remember that. Transformers The Last Night, which I think had a King Arthur. subplot.
Oh
And
yeah,
these are all,
where
yeah.
Optimus is just like a knight in shining armor.
Yeah, and so they're dipping in quality, and then in Bumblebee, it seemed to change. They changed focus. They focused the film on Bumblebee.
Yeah.
That did okay at the box office, but these are all kind of diminishing returns for the franchise. Then they had Transformers: Rise of the Beast, which came out in 2023, which had been the lowest earning film at that point in time before Transformers 1 came out. And the reason I bring up the box office here is quite interesting. So, Transformers 1 had an opening weekend of only $24 million. And so ultimately, it had a domestic gross of less than 60. So that
Mm.
was less than the opening weekend of the previous live action Transformers film. And so I really felt that this film, Transformers 1, was paying for the sins of the previous franchise, where people were like, yeah, I'm tired of this. I don't want to watch this. And so they didn't show up.
Yeah, that's definitely valid. And it breaks my heart because of the box office that we most likely won't get a sequel for this. I hope we do, but numbers don't lie.
That's the sad reality. The worldwide box office total for this one was only $128 million, and there seems to be no indication that there will ever be a sequel to this. By comparison, even Bumblebee and Transformers: Rise of the Beast made at least worldwide $400 million. So this was a massive flop. Let's just, call it what it was. It was a massive flop at the box office, which makes it really unfortunate again that we both consider this a really, really good
Yeah.
film.
Here's hoping that it takes off digitally.
Yes, so this is one people don't pirate, don't download illegally, try to
Yeah,
buy it or
don't.
rent it.
Please pay for this movie.
Yeah, that's how we are here on Movie Postmortem. Sometimes we understand that your money has to speak for you, and that's the only reason these companies will listen. So buy this movie if you can. And so yeah, we both consider this a good movie. So let's dive into this. And so on Movie Postmortem, we want to talk about these films in terms of what was the cause of death, if this was a bad film, or what was the cause of celebration for a great or good film. And so, my main cause of celebration for this film was the writing. The main theme of the movie being that these two sworn enemies that we've known from multiple
Yeah.
films. I'm just going to call them by their final version names,
Yeah.
Optimus Prime and Megatron. I always forget what their temporary names were, but we're seeing Optimus Prime and Megatron when they were both, young miners working for, Cybertron, and they
Yeah.
were friends. They were brothers almost at this point in time. And the story, it's a traditional story, but it's a really well told story of how, two close friends, two almost brothers, have a falling out and end up on the opposite sides,
Yeah.
later.
I will say, just to chime in, their names were Orion Pax and D16,
Yeah, okay, I
which
get that.
and it's and just like him, I'm most likely gonna say their final names here because I mix up names so easily. So I'm most likely gonna just a foreshadow. In this recording, I may end up saying Orion Prime on accident or something
Exactly.
like that.
If there's an O and a P, you know who he's talking about. It's Optimus.
Yeah.
And so even the very I won't call it cliched, but well-run type of story where you have the, brothers who have a difference of opinion and the falling out, you could say like that's just too much of a trope. I actually really liked it because I don't think we always need to see the villains as being so opposite of our heroes in every story. I think it is refreshing to see that just a slight change in perspective and understanding can cause two people to have two very different ideas and two different ways of going about this. We've talked before,
Oh
like,
yes, absolutely.
yeah, people use this a lot with how the X-Men have Professor X, in Magneto. It goes back to the whole Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X, where you don't have people who are completely opposite. It's more interesting, thematically to see people who are really close in how they view things, but reacting differently to a situation.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, think of it this way. How many of you have had a bad Thanksgiving dinner and all of a sudden you don't talk to that family member anymore? It's pretty much just like that.
Exactly. Thanksgiving dinner was so bad that now we're at war with each other.
Yeah.
And like you said before, that's part of where for a movie that you would think would be aimed at kids, there's a lot of heavy lifting because they
Oh,
have to get
absolutely.
Megatron from a brother of Optimus Prime to a guy who was a sworn enemy. So
Yeah.
you're going to have a lot of heavy lifting and a really, deep story to do that. And then Transformers 1, that really is centered around the current ruler of Cybertron, a guy named Sentinel Prime. So Sentinel Prime is the de facto ruler. And what happens in the film, spoiler alert again, is that they find out that Sentinel Prime, despite his good appearance, despite being voiced by John Hamm from Mad Men, that Sentinel Prime is lying. He's been lying to the entire planet of Cybertron. He's really been in cahoots with their enemy for the entire time.
Yeah,
And
the
it's a betrayal.
quintessence.
Yeah, the quintessence. It is really a betrayal. It's a betrayal to the core of what the people on Cybertron believe. And the real divide between these two characters is how Optimus and how Megatron both react to finding out who Sentinel Prime really is.
Yes. And I will say, even though this movie does have a few cliches where you might, if you pretty much watch movies, you might be able to predict where the stories end, where the story ends rather. And if you're a fan of Transformers, then you're most definitely gonna know where the story ends. But that doesn't matter. What you're here for is the ride and how the story is going to get there. And you will be invested in pretty much most of it,
Yes,
including with Sentinel Prime, which pretty much, again, if you're a Transformers fan, you know he's a massive blowhard. So, but here they take like, okay, you know Sentinel's a bad person. Let's bring it up to 11. This
yes.
movie with Sentinel Prime, he invented classism and racism and slavery.
Yes, he's not even a kind of a corporate, bad guy. He's all out traitor committing like genocide against his own people type of guy.
Yeah, literally committing treason on a casual basis and lying to his entire people when on what's happening out there. Again, a false prime and a false prophet that's going around
Yes.
saying like, "Hey, I'm your savior, so get back to work."
Yeah, I agree with you. The things that Sentinel has done are so bad that you understand why Megatron feels so strongly against him. It's revealed in the story that Sentinel is not just a traitor. In the story, Optimus and Megatron, they are miners, working in the caverns of Cybertron, but they're young. They're so young that they can't actually transform. They don't have the ability to change to another form. And it's
Actually,
later.
actually, just gonna put a little nitpick right there.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not that they're so young that they can't transform. It's the fact that Sentinel Prime has been, I will say, nerfing them by taking away from the transformation cogs.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's where I was going. It
Lich,
was like Sentinel
yeah,
is the reason that they can't transform because
yeah.
there's a cog that they should have, like in the center of their chest, but it's revealed that he has those removed from them when they're born. And so
Literally, some guy walking in when you just pop out of your mother, be like, "Hey, I'm gonna break your legs real
yeah,
quick."
let me break your legs real quick. And so this level of, villainy that he's really doing, it takes it above any type of thing, even that Megatron does later in the series. And so you get why they hate this guy. And so this is where you start to see the difference between Optimus and Megatron and how they react to this. So Optimus is disappointed. He's, kind of heartbroken, but the reaction to this by Megatron is different. So, Isaiah, how
Yes,
would you describe Megatron's reaction to this?
I will say later on in the series, not the series, but the movie, when Alpha Trion he reveals the truth behind Sentinel Prime's betrayal and what happened to the first primes, including Megatronus Prime, which at this point is revealed to be Megatron's favorite and pretty much everyone's favorite. And it's revealed that Sentinel Prime made a Faustian deal with the Quintessons and killed all the primes. Orion, he is just like confused, heartbroken, and just like, this is awful. I can't believe we believe this. And then what are we gonna do in response to this? Megatron, however, is like, Sentinel Prime lied to me. He tricked me into almost dying day after day after day in the mines to give Aaron John to our worst enemy, and I hate him for it. And I want to kill him. I want him to suffer because of what he did to me.
Yes, it's very personal. It's very visceral, his reaction to I want him, to be dragged through the mines, through the streets, so everybody knows who he is, and then I want to kill him. And that's where I really was impressed by the film of saying, like, okay, it's not just disappointment. They're showing that Megatron is really upset, in a way where you can say, yeah, I get it, but maybe you're going a little too far there. And this is just really the beginning of like kind of where he ends up in the film. And so
Yes.
that's why I really consider the writing of the movie to be really good because you usually don't have such a clear one moment. It's like Prime and Megatron are the same, but their reaction to this betrayal is where they begin to differ.
Yeah. And a credit to this movie, which a credit to this movie's writing is that they can have a moment that's jokey funny, but a moment that's serious, like Megatron saying, "No, I want to kill him," is met with silence.
Yes, they did not feel the need to undercut it.
Yes. There's no jokes there. There's no like dramatic music score, which they could have, but it'd probably be a little bit cheap. It's what Megatron says in that moment is so like shocking and like hard and rage filled that both the movie and the audience will be stunned for a little bit.
Yes, and that's what you need. You need to let the audiences just sit in that moment sometimes. And so I feel like that was one of the things I appreciated with the heavy moments is that they let the heavy moments be heavy. We don't need humor to break the tension all the time, especially in the heavy moment. We don't go to movies just to laugh at everything. Sometimes I just want to be moved emotionally. And this
Yes.
film had a few moments of that, which is where, again, I was really impressed that for a movie that I thought was aimed at kids to really have very deep moments, very strong emotional beats like that.
Yeah. And so it probably speaks a whole lot about us because both him and I are just so tired of just every single scene being undercut with like either a joke or just like little quips. I'm sick of it in movies. I'm sick of it in cartoons. I'm most definitely sick of it in the MCU.
That'll be an entirely different podcast, probably.
Oh, absolutely. But pretty much, yeah. That's what went into this movie expecting, with like little moments being undercut with jokes, like just Megatron be like, "No, I want to kill him," and then in the back, B would be like, "Oh, he's got some issues" or something like that. But
Someone
no,
woke
complete
up on the wrong
silence.
side of the bed.
Yeah, but
Who
no,
put
they
who
know
put
when to
sand
let
in your
they.
inner John cubes? I'm just trying to undercut what you're saying with bad jokes.
Oh well, that's what it would be like. But no, they know when to let a moment be serious, and I cannot give them enough credit for that.
Yeah, and that's where good movies are not afraid to hit the range of emotions that we can experience, not just tension-breaking humor. Another thing that I thought was really a cause of celebration for the film, surprisingly, was the voice work. And I say surprisingly because I think we're in this phase of
Yeah,
Hollywood now where some people hate it, where every animated film feels like it has to be filled to the brims with voices that you know, rather
yeah,
than just really good voice actors. But
exactly.
I felt
It
that the voice actors did a really good job. Some did remarkably good.
yes, and my goodness, it's happening. It happened in the Borderlands movie where just all celebrity cast for no reason, because I guess Randy Pitchford just liked it, I guess.
Yep.
And number two, with the Rock's Christmas movie, just packed to the brim with celebrities. And
Yep.
spoiler alert, how many of you watched the Rock's Christmas movie? I can bet none of you have really watched it.
No, we will not be covering that on this show.
Yeah. And number three, this movie, again, it does have the sin of having a whole bunch of celebrity VAs, but they do their job perfectly.
Yeah, let's talk
And
about
this,
some of those specifically.
yeah, more specifically, Chris Hemsworth, you were amazing in this.
Yes, he did a phenomenal job. I was really impressed by his ability to play Prime, where here Prime is not the Prime we know. The Prime who is a great, motivational speaker,
Yeah,
leader. He has to play a young Prime who gets closer at the end to being that. But he did a fantastic job, I felt.
yeah. He doesn't start the movie with his "one shall stand, one shall fall." No, he starts off slowly, as in, "Hey, D, let's just go mess up something. Let's just show everyone." Okay, he does still have hints of the Prime that we'll see later on, but he's still very childish and very naive in the start of
Yeah,
the movie.
and honestly reckless. But I think in many ways, maybe that's a great trait for a leader. You want somebody who can lead people to do something, even if it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
So he has that.
He's both reckless and lawful. How about that?
Yes,
Because
we'll give him that.
later on, in the first part of the movie, his idea is let's just jump into the Icon 5000, which is the great Cybertronian race, and let's just show everyone that we're more than just miners, which is both reckless, as in you can't just jump into the race, but also lawful, as in why can't we just jump in the race? We
Yeah,
have
he's shout.
jetpacks, we could
Yeah, yeah,
race.
we can literally do it. Let's actually, push the boundaries of what is considered acceptable. And
Yeah,
he's not going to ask for permission. He's just going to do it, which
yeah,
is an interesting point.
we not be able to transform, but let's see what we could do without transforming.
Yeah, which is a great point because his recklessness is also one of the things that you see kind of putting him at odds with Megatron because Prime is a person, as you said, who will just decide he wants to do something and people should follow him. He doesn't give Megatron a choice a lot of times. You could see Megatron being like, even when we're friends, even before all of the dramatic stuff happens, I'm kind of annoyed at you, dude, because you're always doing this.
Yeah, you woke me up. You woke me up in the middle of the night to go drag me to do whatever, and
Yeah, I,
I'm supporting you because you're my friend, but I'm going to beat you later.
Yeah, he says, I'm going to beat you later, and you understand why. And so I think Chris Hemsworth had a hard job. Peter Cullen, the famous voice of Optimus Prime, is a tough act to follow.
Yes, no matter what you do, you can only come so close to being as good as Optimus as Peter Cullen.
Yes, Peter
And
Cullen is so good. He's been the only voice of Optimus before
for
this.
like 30 years now.
Yes, he's been the guy from the animated show, the animated movie, the live action Bay films, and Bumblebee in every version. If you needed Optimus, it was always Peter Cullen.
To Chris Hemsworth's credit, he directly voiced Optimus Prime while getting tips from Peter Cullen, which is why later on during the movie he starts to sound more like the Optimus that we recognize.
Yeah, and that's really smart. And I was impressed by the end. He had the same inflections. He sounded like a younger version, but he had that not just the cadence, but the gravitas in his voice was there. And that really made me say, like, yeah, this is young Optimus Prime.
Yeah, and also spoiler alert because Optimus Prime has to give a motivational speech in the movie because that would be criminal if he didn't. Spoiler, he his motivational speech isn't all his. He takes what was given to him by Orion, not Orion, what was his name? Alpha Trion, and he modifies it so the miners will be motivated.
Exactly. A little bit of plagiarism, but it did his job.
Yeah. Like his speech was so good, he had me ready to fight Decepticon later on.
Yeah, it has to be there because that's one of the key characteristics of Optimus Prime is his motivation. I would say like a good leader has that, Prime has that, and Chris Hemsworth has to show like I can voice that guy. And on the other side, we have Brian Tyree Henry, who is voicing Megatron. And
Yes.
again, this is more of a classic voice actor change where they're saying, like, look, we've kind of moved on from the classic Megatron voice. They abandoned him for the live action films, and so they went a completely different direction with Brian Tyree, which I felt was interesting, but I thought it worked well for what he had to do.
Yes. And for all of our viewers that are more akin to me, we appreciate a black Megatron.
Yeah, exactly.
Not only that, but for the all of you God of War fans out there, Megatron sounds a whole lot like Kratos does when he's just yelling and just raging, which is also perfect. Incredibly angry men going on a rampage because they have been hurt personally.
Yes, and as you said earlier, his big moments of emotional like outbursts, those were very effective. And that's where for the actor, I've never really conveyed him, with that type of emotion, but I think he really did a great job. He has this very genuine, authenticity when he was angry in his voice, and I thought like, yeah, it really worked for the character.
Yes, and another credit to him. And I have no idea how he did it, if this is true. But apparently, there was no echo added to his screams later on. Somehow he made an echo in the booth when he was screaming.
Now, he has
I
a
don't know
great
if it's
voice.
I don't know if it's true or not, but if it is, that is amazing.
he did a great job, and especially at the end where he has to be angry, he has to, really show that villain that is Megatron and bring that rage. He does a fantastic job. The other, cast members are, serviceable. I would say I don't want to dwell on it for a long time, but I thought Steve Buscemi as Starscream, with a little bit of a backstory to how Starscream got his voice,
Yeah, to
I
how he
thought that was
sounds like a bird in G1.
yeah, I love G1 Starscream. Like,
Yeah,
and so I thought that was a nice touch. Scarlett Johansson has a great voice. She's always, doing voice acting. For this movie, she was a lead of one. I didn't think she brought anything special to it, but it was just solid work.
yeah. She's pretty much just Black Widow in this movie,
Yeah,
which
and
is,
you can't
yeah,
hear her voice now without thinking about Black Widow, and so I was like, okay, she did a fine job. Keegan Michael Key, he was B-127, also known as Bumblebee. So now we have a talking Bumblebee, and he did his job. He was fine.
yeah. He
Bumblebee
was,
was clearly comic relief.
yeah, he was the comic relief and the support for Optimus.
Yeah. And so it was really that a really good supporting cast of actors really anchoring the film, which again, like I think for a lot of films we just look for famous names. I thought, yeah, you got famous names for this, but they actually did a really good job with what they needed to do. Let's take a break and pay some bills, and then we'll come back to talk more on movie postmortem. Ready for the ride of your life? Grab your tickets now for the Icon 5000, Cybertron's most electrifying high speed race. Watch as the galaxy's best racers hit top gear on the shimmering tracks of Icon City. Thrill to the roar of the engines, the clash of the titans, and the occasional explosion of a poorly timed turbo boost. This isn't just racing, it's survival at 5,000 miles per hour. And for the first time ever, you can upgrade to our VIP Energon Pit Pass. Meet the racers, fuel up on premium Energon snacks, and watch the action up close from the safety of a blast-proof shield. And as a listener of Movie Postmortem, you get an exclusive deal. Use promo code POSTMORTEM5000 at checkout for 10% off your tickets. Because if you're going to witness the chaos, you might as well save some Energon while you're at it. Don't miss the race that critics call more explosive than Megatron on a bad day. Get your tickets now at iaconspeedway.com. Because on Cybertron, the fastest survive and the slowest become spare parts. And we're back on Movie Postmortem. And Isaiah, do you have another cause of death or cause of celebration for us?
I feel like it does have a message you can give to children. That something that they probably need to learn early on, and something that will do them favors later on, which is sometimes friends are just going to break up,
Yeah.
and sometimes your friend isn't who you thought they were, and sometimes you just need to let them go.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you could imagine, let's do alternate universe, although on Movie Postmortem, we generally hate the multiverse.
Oh,
But
my, I'm so sick of multiverses.
let's talk about a multiverse with this, where Megatron and Prime stay friends. One way or the other, they just decide, like, I'm just going to stick with this guy, even though I disagree with him completely. And I'll put it out there, it's not controversial, hopefully, but there is a angle you could look at with this story in that Megatron is completely right in how he views this situation, and you understand why he makes the choices that he does. You understand why Prime might consider him a villain, but you could say, like, yes, I understand why Megatron is viewed as being absolutely correct and being on the right side of this. And that's good writing.
Oh yes, because at the end of the movie, with how bad Sentinel is, you can understand why Megatron's like, okay, Sentinel needs to die, and he is correct. For all the crimes he's committed for Cybertron, he would be convicted of the death penalty multiple times over.
Or I even think the thing that Megatron is worried about is that Sentinel would not suffer the consequences that he should suffer. Because Prime is still saying, yes, I get that he's wrong. He needs to be brought on trial. He needs to pay, but we can't do this outside of the justice system. And Megatron seems to say, yeah, the justice system may let him get away with this, so I want to make sure that he pays. I think that's a message that resonates with a lot of people.
Which is also valid in the movie because the justice system is probably picked by Sentinel. So
Exactly. And so Megatron's basic, idea is that I want to get my hands on him and he will suffer justice at my hands.
like
Again,
screw
like
the justice system. I'm judge, jury, and executioner.
yes, and so you get by the end of the movie that Megatron doesn't just hate Sentinel, he hates Optimus Prime, he hates the entire system that Optimus still believes in, and Megatron is kind of like, I'm just done with all of it. And at the end of the
Yeah,
film, he's like, I will never listen to another Prime ever again.
and Megatron, that he has a very big flaw there. And if he was just given time to like grieve and process everything, he will realize I'm on the wrong path because Sentinel, he was never a prime to begin with.
Yes. And I think that's an interesting point that you brought up. The speed of which everything in this movie takes place, you really see Megatron suffering these betrayals and feeling a lot of anger and pain. And it's over probably a few days, if maybe not less time, in
It's
terms of the
like
movie
two
time.
days, I
Yeah, like
think.
2 days. And so you get the idea, like you said, if he simply had a chance to calm down, he wouldn't make the choices that he's making. But that's sadly a very real thing where sometimes people are too quick to make decisions in the heat of the moment without actually thinking.
Yeah, for Megatron and Orion, things just things just pile on top of each other. It's like day one, we almost die in the mines. Day two, we run. It's like day one, we almost die in the mines. Day one, also, we run the Icon. Day one continued, we get dumped in the garbage, and then day two, we're on the surface, and everything sucks out here too.
Yes, and so they find themselves in a situation where their entire understanding of how the world works is just shattered. And that's again one of the great moments that, Brian Tyree does with the voice acting of Megatron. When Megatron finds out, the truth about Sentinel Prime, his initial response is that he's angry at Optimus. He's angry that Optimus dragged him up to the surface and that he had to see this. So now his belief system has just been destroyed. And he's
Yeah.
angry at his friend. If you hadn't just done all of this, then I wouldn't know any of this. And I'd still be living this beautiful lie and not realizing what everything is really like.
Yes. And also, a credit to this movie's writing is that the turn for Megatron isn't unbelievable because D has always had that anger. He's just never had that use. He's just never had that enable for it.
Yes, I agree.
Even from the very beginning, there are multiple moments where like, man, if I had that transformation cock, I'd transform into a shovel and beat you with it. Or like,
Yeah.
if we survive this icon, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, there's some underlying anger there.
Yeah, he's always been angry, but this is where he hits his boiling point, and he finally has a way to unleash it.
Yeah, and maybe this might be early, but I think we should talk about it now. And literally, what you have with D16, the previous version of Megatron, when he gets his cog, what he does is he can transform and develop his iconic, arm cannon. So it's literally a guy with anger issues who all of a sudden has a gun. Like you couldn't get any more on the nose, maybe with the writing, but I
Yeah,
think it actually works really well when it happens in the story.
yeah. It also hits to his anger issues because the other Transformers, Leda, B, and Orion, they transform into like motorcycles and cars and trucks, and Megatron is a tank, a weaponized vehicle for destruction.
Yes. And I've talked to you before about this. I'm a fan of the original Megatron who was just simply a gun
Yeah,
and I
a
was
Walter
hope
P-38.
I want him to turn to the Walther, but he didn't. So I understand your generation is used to Megatron being a tank or something else, but I wanted him to turn into a gun.
I also would like it for the fan service moments if they just kind of like give it like a little nod to it. I understand why they wouldn't do it because it would have completely taken away from the moment, but I really wanted that fan service moment where we have just Walter P. 38 Megatron.
Yeah,
Maybe like a maybe like a post credit scene or something like that.
and so one of the things we like to do on Movie Postmortem is give constructive criticism about ways that the filmmakers could have improved their story, even if we like it and even if we love it. And so we'll take a short break and we'll come back with our script stitch up. Okay, now we have arrived at our script stitch up stage. This is where we want to give some free writes, some free rewrite advice to the movie makers. This is just designed to be constructive criticism because even a good movie, maybe there's some things that we could, improve if we, had a chance. And so, anything that you think of, off the top of your head, Isaiah, that you might
Yes.
say,
This is a fair criticism that I also think, and I've also seen a whole lot of people say over the internet now. This is fair that they learned to fight remarkably quickly.
yeah, that's true.
Just even halfway through the movie, where just Alita One is just she's just again just Black Widow, and even though they're like modding bots, I'm just like, how are we able to do this already?
Yeah, they had construction jobs and they are able to not only hold their own, but beat the high guard who were like elite warriors, in an afternoon.
Well, to be fair, Megatron beat Starscream. I don't really think you need to try that hard.
I think Starscream was really into it.
I well, oh boy,
That's a different story.
yeah. Moving on from that one.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was again a trope, but I felt it could have been handled a little better was again the idea that we have to see everything of significance in the film. So by the end of this film, we see how Megatron got his symbol. We see not only they're falling out, which is essential, but we see other things. Like I think the speech that Prime gives where he talks about the name Autobots, it was really kind of ham-fisted and forced in there, and I felt like we didn't need that. I feel like there's a really fine line between paying tribute and too much fan service. So I think like maybe really like in the last 2 minutes, they tried to work in just one or two, too many references to the, OG, established characters.
Yeah, and I do have a little like fan nitpick, which
Sure.
is something that isn't completely necessary, but I will want it for me. If it's just somewhere in this movie, they just needed to play "You've Got the Touch."
Yes, that is too iconic to leave out. Their production budget is listed at 75 million. I don't know if this is something they could do cheaper and hope that the audience finds the film now that it's gotten, great reviews and maybe it finds a home on streaming. So I would hope that they could figure out a way to fix the errors of the marketing to actually have a sequel. That's one of the reasons we decided to cover
Yeah,
this. This is a good film that did not
yeah.
get a lot of attention, and so it deserves to be talked about.
See it. Yeah, this movie is too good to where my criticisms just turn into just me just fan wishes.
Yeah, exactly. That's not actually a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't really have that much to criticize with this movie.
That's what we say here on Movie Postmortem. Every movie deserves a postmortem. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's really just dissecting what made it work or what made it not work. In this case, a lot of things made this movie work, from the, ground up. And the only thing that kind of let it down was the marketing that happened after the film was finished. And so that's really unfortunate. I think people should try to find this film and talk about it no matter where you have to find it, if you have to buy a DVD or Blu-ray, or I think it's on Paramount Plus streaming. Find this movie and talk about it. It's really good. If you're a fan of the original Transformers, you're gonna love this, and I can't recommend it enough. Okay, that's it for this episode of Movie Postmortem. Don't forget to like and subscribe and give us 5 stars because even bad podcasts deserve a good review. Remember, whether it's good, bad, or just a guilty pleasure, every movie deserves a postmortem. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.